Welcome into another edition of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. I'm Kyle Glaser. We have a very, very special show today breaking down the state of the Padres minor leagues. And to do that, I am pleased to be joined by John Conniff, publisher of MadFriars. John has covered the Padres system for years and years and years. We've known each other for years. When I was covering the system at Baseball America, we talked a lot, and he was kind enough to have me, interview for some of his content. And now I'm returning the favor. John, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, no problem. I think we even knew each other a little bit before you were at Baseball America too.
Yeah, I think I first met you my first year on the Padres beat, which was 2015. And I was there 15 and part of 16. Then BA hired me away in the middle of 2016. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously doing some stuff covering the Padres then, was also going up to Lake Elsinore. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I knew you even before the BA days, which feels a long time ago now. That'd be over a decade almost.
It was. We were picking your brains on the pitcher that they got out of Victorville. We got
Reggie Lawson.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. You were helping us break down what Reggie could and could not do, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I know him well. My very first job, for those who don't know, the background here is my very first job was working for the Victorville Daily Press, covering High Desert Mavericks minor league baseball as well as local high school baseball in the area. So I knew all the guys up there, and then moved over to the Riverside Press Enterprise and Orange County Register, and was still doing some local baseball stuff before being bumped up to the Padres beat during our short-lived expansion to San Diego. Nonetheless, John, there have been a lot of really, really good prospects to come through the Padres system over the last decade.
That's true.
Most of whom have been traded away to other teams.
Yes.
And once again, at this year's trade deadline, the Padres made 5 trades involving 22 players total. They traded away 14 players, 11 of whom were prospects. Post-trade deadline, what would you say is the current state of the Padres farm system in terms of the talent that remains?
Not great. It's funny is a lot of radio shows and podcasts, and I'm always incredibly flattered when they call me up or they want my opinion or David Day's or Kevin Cherry's or any of us on the site about what we think of the trades. And we kind of always shock people a little bit where we say, we were for them, because the purpose of the minor league system make the major league system better. And, one article I will even cite is one of your last articles you wrote for Baseball America, which I think was pretty good. Yeah, look, Kyle's happy. You remember that? No, that was a very good article because you point out most times these trades work. The prospects don't work out. And the problem with most people who write about the major leagues is they have so much to do. They don't really pay any attention to prospects. So when they say, oh yeah, this is a great trade and it's fine, they're about as competent talking on the minor leagues as I am talking about the Serbian Pro League. And, and it's not a good choice to have. And, one of the trades that came down is one of the guys who I like said, and one of the guys that sent to the Orioles was Boston Bateman. And if you know who he is, you must read MadFriars every day. Go, well, that's nice, but a lot of people knew who Boston Bateman was. So, the system, to answer your initial question, they still have a couple guys. They have Kruz Schoolcraft, who we'll talk about later in this podcast, who is their top pitcher and probably on a lot of charts was a better player than he was picked at, had some signing bonus concerns.
Yes.
Cash Mayfield's still pretty good, Ethan Salas, but just the depth of the system, it's going to take a hit when you make that many trades.
No question about it. And I think it's important for everyone to remember that the point of the minor leagues is to produce players who will help you in the major leagues.
Yes.
Now, generally speaking, you do that through raising them through your system, graduating them to the big league club, and hopefully they become cornerstones for you. But another way to do it is to use them in trades for proven major league veterans. Every team that has ever been successful has done a mix of both. It's just a matter of to what degree and which side they lean on. The Padres, of course, have gone very, very heavily into trading prospects for proven major league talent. Some of their trades have worked out great. Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove, etc. Others have worked out really, really poorly. The Mike Clevenger trade is one example. The Austin Nola trade is another. So on balance, we have to see how it all shakes out. in terms of what's remaining, and I think this is a good juncture to assess it because the Class A seasons just wrapped up last weekend. The Comp
Correct.
League wrapped up earlier this summer. Double A wraps up this weekend. Triple A wraps up later this month. So we're more or less at the end of the minor league season.
Pretty much.
No farm system is ever truly empty, and I'll dive into that a little later, but you're right. I think you could probably count on one hand now the number of prospects in the Padres system who really project to be, even average everyday major leaguers. Is that a fair assessment?
I would, but there's one thing I want to just go back a little bit is, and you would probably realize this, is that, it's people like us who go out and talk to the players and the minor league guys, and we see what the grind is. You also have to look at it a little bit in a kind of a cold fashion that these guys are also kind of like a stock, and they got their value goes up and it goes down. And the key on that, I think, would go back and look at the Jason Adam trade last year. Was Dylan Lesko was one of the top pitchers. I think Keith Law said he had the best changeup he'd ever seen of anyone at the high school level. And he had Tommy John, came back, Kevin Charity, and I saw him in his last game at Lake Elsinore going into, I think, the 2023 season, and we were pretty impressed, especially with his curve. And then we see him in spring, he was horrible. And then he was even worse in low A, at high A with Fort Wayne. And that's where you're seeing his value go down. So when they made that trade for Jason Adam, as someone pointed out, if that trade was made at the beginning of the season, it would have cost a lot more. And that's what they had to do. So that's one thing the Padres have been very good at, and it's kind of a harsh thing, is making these deals. And the last part before we get into some of the players is I haven't really been against many of the trades. The extensions I've had some problems with, and the free agent signings. And what you're looking at, and I think you've said this before, is you're looking at 2033 when you're going to have two 40-year-old infielders. And that doesn't mean it's going to happen, but on paper it is, with Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado. So if they're going to win, it kind of has to be now. You have to kind of throw kind of the chips in a little bit forward. And that's, I think, was one of the big reasons for all the trades.
There's no question that there is an urgency within the Padres front office, within the Padres business dealings, the business leadership, within really the organization as a whole, that they want to win and win right now. And that is a big reason why they're willing to make so many of these high profile trades in terms of trading away big name prospects and hoping that it helps make the big league team better now. 2028, 2029 be damned. Whether that works out or not, time will tell, but that is the mindset. So with that, John, as I mentioned, as much as the Padres significantly have thinned out their farm system, no farm system is ever truly empty. I think back to the Angels farm systems of 2015, 2016, which were among the worst I've ever seen. But even out of there, Taylor Ward has had a career. David Fletcher and Jared Walsh came out. Right. They had a couple seasons. The 2018 Mariners farm system, that was atrocious. Look, Dan Vogelbach was there. He had a career. And down in the Dominican, a 17-year-old teenager named Julio Rodriguez was getting his career started. 2021 Nationals, also horrible farm system, maybe the worst I've actually ever seen. Luis Garcia is there, Cade Cavalli is there. So even when it's a terrible farm system, there's always someone. And this Padres farm system is not as bad or as thin as those.
No.
So with that, Ethan Salas is the consensus top-ranked prospect in this system. He missed most of this season with a stress fracture in his back, and that comes after a year in which he hit 202 in A-ball. What would you say the status of Ethan Salas is now? Because you mentioned prospects, their stocks go up and down. There is no question it has gone down, both in terms of performance and health for Ethan Salas. Where would you assess him at right now?
Well, there's a squabble within the MadFriars family about where we all see Ethan Salas. My personal opinion is, and I think it's much more, it's better to talk about where all of us agree and then kind of diverge out where we have a problem. When you go to spring training and you get to stand behind the pitchers, you can see how well Ethan Salas's hands move. He moves very well laterally, side to side. The coaches talk about his maturity for his age. He calls a really good game. His arm speed has his pop at times have increased from behind the plate. He's got a very smooth swing. He does swing at strikes. But the problem with a lot of the hype around Ethan Salas is that he pretty much had one really good month in Lake Elsinore.
Correct.
And then for a variety of reasons, they decided they wanted to promote him.
Yeah.
I was told they had to kind of make a stop for him in high A, which they did for about, I think about 10 games. And they sent him
I think it was 9 games. Yeah.
9 games, yeah. It was ridiculous. But he went up there. He didn't perform well. And so when he came back to spring training, there was a little bit of a shock that he wasn't going up to AA. And all through last season, when I saw him in Fort Wayne, defensively he was there, but this is where it's tough to look at the statistics. He will swing at strikes. He does have a lot of the metrics that you look for, but he's not swinging really at the right strikes. He was swinging awfully early in the count compared to what he did in low A. And they looked like he was trying to go for too much to get up there. He didn't really kind of calm down till later in the season, and it was around 250. That was his best month. So he was up for 10 games with the Missions. I thought he looked overmatched. I thought it would have actually been better for Ethan if he had been traded, because my guess is the first thing someone would have done to trade him is they put him in high A. They aren't sticking him double A. The Padres put him back in Fort Wayne, which is what I would do, because I think catching's the most difficult position. And I mean, no shade or disrespect toward Ethan at all. He's a nice kid when I've chatted with him. It's very difficult to hit in double A if you have not done it in high A.
Yes. I mean, I will say what I said in 2023 when I was at BA watching Ethan Salas regularly at Lake Elsinore.
Yeah.
The Padres promoting him to even high A was questionable. Promoting him to double A that year was organizational malpractice.
Oh, I agree.
It was completely unjustifiable.
I got asked that on Darren Smith's show. He said, we just had Kyle Glaser on there, and he gave the quote, just you said. I think I texted you afterward. And he goes, what's your opinion of Kyle's opinion? I go, well, that's exactly what I would have said. So, I mean, that's what all of us would have said.
He was not ready physically. He was not ready skill-wise. No part of him was ready for that. And look, ever since then, the Padres rushing him, I do think, has hurt him. That said, this is still a young teenager who has a lot of skills and a lot of tools to work with. He is very good, as you mentioned, defensively, both in terms of physical aspects as well as the mental aspects, leading pitchers. He does have, when his swing is right, it's a smooth, nice left-handed swing. He knows the strike zone. He's going to need time. In terms of the Arizona Fall League, what will you be watching for from him? And what do you think everyone else should be watching for from him, given this was a lost season?
I think the problem with Arizona Fall League that I've always heard from a lot of the coaches in the system that I talk to is a lot of people are just kind of working on things there, especially pitchers. So it's hard really to evaluate how well, and also it's in the desert. I think where the ball flies in spring training, maybe the breaking balls aren't quite the same. I would look for him just to be back there and to be healthy. I think the bigger question is, what you brought up is, where does he start next year? Put it this way, we have a season preview every year. We had Mike Daly on, who's the assistant director of player development, and we put his quotes right there. We said, what made you decide to promote Ethan Salas to AA? And it was all about the trend that he was going, and he really held his own in the Arizona Fall League last year, and he hit 228. It was a pretty empty 228. And, I wasn't going to contradict Mike, who's a good guy, good baseball guy, but I think all of the people that read us or follow minor league baseball, they probably have their own opinions about where they think Ethan should have started. All of us were united. We thought he should have started. All 5 of us, we thought he should have started at Fort Wayne.
All right, everyone. We will have more from John Conniff and MadFriars here in a few minutes. But right now it's time for the DK Player Spotlight. In the spirit of today's minor league farm system update, we're going to highlight one of the Padres' biggest homegrown successes in Adrien Morejon. Adrien Morejon has been one of the biggest reasons for the Padres' success this year. We all know about Robert Suarez. We all know about Mason Miller and what he can do. But Adrien Morejon has stepped up this year and become one of the best relief pitchers in all of baseball. Even though he took the loss on Wednesday against the Reds, he still has a 1.90 ERA this year. He is holding opposing batters to a 178 batting average. Throughout the season, Adrien Morejon has been someone that the Padres can turn to in the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, and occasionally the 9th. And I think it's really important to appreciate where Adrien Morejon came from and what his journey was. He was a star pitcher for Cuba's junior national teams. He jumped on international radars at the 15U World Baseball Softball Confederation World Cup when he pitched a complete game with 12 strikeouts to lead Cuba to the gold medal over the United States. He absolutely carved a U.S. lineup that included Royce Lewis, who of course was the #1 overall pick in 2017. As soon as he was a free agent, the Padres signed him for an $11 million signing bonus, the largest bonus in franchise history at the time for an amateur player. And it took Morejon a little bit to find his footing. He always had really, really good stuff. Easy velocity. He had two kinds of changeups when he first arrived on the scene, one that dove one way, one that dove the other. You saw the breaking ball. But he had a lot of trouble staying healthy. Dating back even to his days in A-ball, he missed most of the second half of his breakout season with Lake Elsinore with triceps soreness. Later on, we know he had Tommy John surgery in 2021. He'd had a left shoulder impingement that ended his season prior to that. He missed most of 2023 with a left elbow sprain. It took Morejon a little while to find the right role and just stay on the mound. Initially, the Padres viewed him as a starter at various points. He was comped to Julio Urias. I heard Max Fried. Carlos Rodon was someone else that came up. And he did have some effective spot starts. But it's important to really realize that up through 2024, Adrien Morejon had had parts of 5 seasons in the majors and had a 5.28 ERA over 50 games. He had not been effective. He couldn't stay on the mound. He wasn't healthy. And there was some concern that maybe this wouldn't be an investment that worked out for the Padres. And to his credit, he reinvented himself and really, really found a home in the Padres bullpen over the last 2 years. We saw it, of course, last season in 2024, had a 2.83 ERA, really established himself as a core component of the Padres bullpen. But he has taken it to a new level this year. He was rewarded with his first All-Star Game selection. And once again, we have seen him be effective against righties, against lefties, and low leverage spots, mid leverage spots, high leverage spots, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. He has been effective in every scenario against every type of hitter. And in a lot of ways has become one of the Padres' best homegrown pitching success stories. We've talked a lot about the Padres have developed, have signed or drafted and then developed a lot of talented pitching prospects. Most of them were traded away before they got a chance to play for the Padres. When you look at the homegrown pitchers who have put on a Padre uniform, Adrien Morejon has established himself as arguably the best in terms of the career he's had over these last few seasons. And also there's a lot more to come. We talk about it was a long path for him to get here. He's still in his age 26 season. He doesn't turn 27 until next February. Right now, he is one of the best relief pitchers in baseball and someone the Padres can count on for years to come. And right now, he has been, once again, a homegrown success story for the Padres' entire scouting staff. This has been another DraftKings Player Spotlight. I encourage everyone to go ahead and check out DraftKings Pick 6. It is football season right now. It's really simple. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats from breakout rookies to elite quarterbacks and unlock the upside every snap brings. The better your calls, the bigger your payout. And here's the kickoff bonus. New DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on their first pick set. This season, play your player instincts. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL. Play just $5, get $50 in Pick 6 bonus picks. Make the call. Ride the upside. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And now, back to our interview with John Conniff. We will see if, given the irregularity of his development path, if he can get back on just kind of that normal progression you want to see from a teenager, just layering on the physical development, layering on the skill development, and hopefully building up to something. Like you said, I think anytime you're talking about a catcher with a back issue, you just want to see him stay healthy. Performance, almost secondary. You would just want to make sure he's able to withstand the grind of catching, see how his swing looks, make sure, the body's working great, and go from there. And you're right, it is noticeable again. And this isn't to pick on Ethan Salas. He's been put in positions that he should not have been put in. Most of the time, this offensive success they're talking about, it's in short spurts. Like Elsinore, he had 3 really good weeks, and that's what made them, promote him. Okay. And in the fall league last year, he got to a really good start for the first couple of weeks and then completely fell off the table. So anytime you've talked about, Ethan Salas looks really good, it's been for 3 weeks to a month max. And a big part of development is consistency and sustaining your success, especially as pitchers see you second, third time through the league. Guys get to know you better. They know your holes. They know your weaknesses. And he's never really been given the chance to do that. I do think that this will be a very critical year for Ethan Salas' development, not in the context of, if he bombs out this year, he's a bust.
Right.
But things have to start trending in the right direction. And if it doesn't, I think it is a sign that the Padres just completely botched this to a point it might be beyond repair.
Well, maybe for people that aren't a bunch of minor league geeks like we are on this might help a little bit is, like, I got asked this after Leo DeVries had a great first month. Yeah. When's he going to come up? I said, well, just like what you said is, if he has a great series, the first thing the opposing team is going to do when they see him, they're going to run back all the tape. They're going to see where they can specifically attack him and what adjustments he can make. And the biggest thing is there's more of a difference, in my opinion. I don't know, you might think differently, Kyle, is it used to be low A and high A were kind of closer. With the shutdown of the short season league, the ball's gotten worse in low A and it's kind of increased in high A. So someone like Ethan, could be up at the plate, and maybe in high A he sees a strike that's a slider at the knees on the outside. That's not one he should swing at, and he goes, well, the guy can't throw it again or else he'd be higher. Well, now in high A he can throw it again. So you have to really how well your approach is, and that's the thing. That's the biggest thing I think is really tough to develop, because if you think it's tough to hit in high A, it is vastly different to hit. And especially also, let's consider the park he's playing in San Antonio, which is probably one of the worst hitting parks for the minor leagues. When the wind comes across, it is vicious.
Yeah, no, again, there are a lot of things you said that ring true. Since the dissolution of the short season leagues and the consolidation of the minors, the caliber of play at low A has become at times unwatchable, just to be frank.
Yeah, I agree.
Very painful.
Yes.
And I think it's really, really important that whenever someone sees a young kid doing really well in low A, understanding that it is horrible quality baseball there now, and your only reaction should be, great, I want to see him at high. And even high A is not quite what it used to be. Really, I mean, it was already the biggest jump in the minors from high A to double A, but I think that's become even more true. So again, everyone's reaction to seeing a player do well in low A, no matter how touted this player is, should be, great, I want to see him in high A. It is just such a terrible quality of baseball. You really should not be making any summary judgments on a player's major league potential based on what they do at low A. So that said, we will see what Ethan Salas is able to do in the Arizona Fall League, and if he's able to get back on a development track that is trending upward. We shall see. Right. John, there are a few other prospects in the Padres system that are intriguing. Cash Mayfield was the Padres' first-round pick last year, went out to Lake Elsinore this year. Early in the season, he got really sick in spring training, lost a bunch of weight, so it took him a little bit of time to build up. Then he missed some time in May, but over the course of the season, he performed well, 2.97 ERA. It was a lot of short outings, 3 innings here, but by the end of the year, they were building him up, and he threw a couple 5-inning stints at the very end of the year. What were the overall impressions of Cash Mayfield's first pro season? The scouts I talked to have been, have liked what they've seen, but what were your overall thoughts on Cash Mayfield's first full season?
I did watch him most of the year, and I lucked out because I got to see him in person at his second to last start, and then talked to him the next day. And he lost. I think he told me he lost about 20 to 25 pounds, and he doesn't really have 20 to 25 pounds to lose. He's 6'4". Yeah. I think he just got his weight back up. He's around 195 to 200. Yep. Has really good command of his fastball. His manager there is Brian Burris, who pitched for a long time. And professionally, we had parts of 6 seasons in the major league, so he's a really good manager for him. He kind of has 2. He says he just throws 1 fastball, a 4-seam fastball, but depending where his arm slot is, it can kind of act like a 2-seamer at times. Yeah. Has a very good slider. This changeup probably needs a little more work. The main thing is he just needs to get stronger and throw more innings. But yeah, they were pretty happy with him, and those were the 2 guys, was Boston Bateman and Cash Mayfield, and the Orioles ended up picking Bateman to go to Baltimore.
Yeah, Boston Bateman was getting a lot of praise from evaluators, both inside and outside the Padres system, for his work this year. And it's not really a surprise that for the Padres to get 2 impact everyday bats, they had to part with a prospect as talented as Boston Bateman. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do as part of the 6-player deal.
Well, I mean, what we talked about, not to jump all around, but, one thing that's kind of missing is AJ Preller at the trade deadline could have done a really normal thing. He could have kept DeVries and just made the trade for Sears, sent over Baez and Net.
Braden Net. And
he could have he said, we're going to promote Campusano, who's been doing well. We're not going to trade either, Berger or Kolek. And, we're going to get O'Hearn, but we're not going to get Laureano. So that way Bateman doesn't have to go. And it probably would have been enough for the playoffs, but not enough really to win the World Series. And so that's kind of the, it's kind of the equation or gamble that you have to take.
And again, there are a lot of players in the Padres system year after year after year that opposing teams are very interested in. And that is a testament to, again, AJ Preller and his staff are among the best at evaluating amateur talent, particularly teenage talent, high school and international levels. Again, there are other areas that they are not as strong, but that is one of their strengths and has been.
Well, to speak to what you just said, an excellent example of that is a player who's doing well with the Marlins right now is Jacob Marcy. The Padres have an extensive, they probably have as many, you can talk about this much better than I can. They have probably as big a scouting staff as anybody in baseball. Yes. And so when they saw Marcy at Central Michigan I think it was at Western Michigan, I believe, he was playing right field, and he was playing there because that was a more difficult outfield and was a larger one. The scout said he could probably play center. He liked his ability to control the strike zone. There were some things they thought they had to work on, but they got him, and they were able to make him into a pretty good player. He struggled last year after he got traded, but now he's doing really well. So that's kind of an example of why you pay so much for scouts and don't just hope. You send the guys to the SEC tournament and then for the perfect games, and then we're done. Yeah. So they found a lot of players, and we're going to talk about one at Elsinore hopefully a little bit later in this podcast. That'll be fun.
For sure. There's no question about it. Having eyes on the ground is critically important, and a lot of teams have forgotten that. And I don't mean eyes on the ground in terms of going to a showcase and seeing a guy pitch 1 or 2 innings. I mean seeing them over the course of a long season, how they hold up, how they perform, and ultimately what they can do day in and day out, not just on a short look.
Time for your weekly Arena Club segment where we see what AJ pulls from a slab pack. And here we go. Pulling a little Emerald pack this week, AJ. Looking for something big?
Always. I'm always looking for the big thing. Next big thing, Scott.
Big money, baby.
Yep. No whammies.
We've got a Dave Winfield card from 1974, a 74 Topps card from this Emerald pack. Estimated value $300. You could sell it back for $270.
Sold.
I feel like you're into more of the current players. Would that be accurate?
No, I mean,
you like Legends?
In my showroom, I have a Robin Yount. I have a Griffey rookie card.
Oh,
I think
that's true.
So I mean, I have some older vintager players. Bob Gibson.
Oh yeah, you have Gibson.
So I disagree, Scott. But Dave Winfield, for that amount of money back, I'm reselling it.
And if you want to get your own pack or new card, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase at arenaclub.com/foul.
Cruz Schoolcraft was one of the top left-handed high school pitching prospects in this year's draft class. Prior to the draft, I did an episode talking about how it was no secret he was the Padres' top target. If he was there, they were going to take him.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it worked out. Schoolcraft pitched in the Bridge League. Just to give people some background, the Bridge League is a fairly new league in which players who are drafted now kind of have an opportunity to pitch a little bit between the end of the Arizona Complex League season and the start of Instructional League, with the draft being moved back a month, the ACL season being moved a month earlier. Those guys don't really have a place to play when they get drafted now. So they've started this Bridge League where, again, it's more or less extended minor league spring training.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, he went out, got a start there, did well, came out, made one start at Lake Elsinore,
Correct.
Walked 3 batters, gave up, a couple runs. And it wasn't the cleanest outing, but he was pitching in high school, 3 months ago. You don't want to judge him on one outing at the end of the season at Lake Elsinore. What have been the early reviews of Kruz Schoolcraft from your guys' perspective?
What was interesting, the guy he was throwing to was Truett Madonna, who they took in the 11th round from Washington State, who was also, was in high school earlier in the year. And the DH that night was Ty Harvey from Florida, another catcher who they took.
Someone they're very high on, by the way.
Yeah.
Ty Harvey is someone they feel like they got a steal there.
Yeah, they probably did. Well, the thing is I watched that game with Cruz, and I think the first 9 pitches he threw were balls, and he walked 2, came back to strike out a couple, a lot of double. I think he went 1.2 innings, struck out, I think about 4 guys. Yeah. I thought he flashed a very good fastball, was like 96 to 99, I thought. His changeup is probably his best secondary pitch. Slider needs a little bit more work.
Yes.
They did like him a lot. I mean, one thing which can help, and again, this very much more than I do, is when I was in DC, I got a chance to talk to AJ Preller kind of casually and was asking him about Schoolcraft, and I brought up with Cobb Hightower, one of the guys they traded over to Baltimore. I said, from what I understand, one of your scouts told us he saw every single high school game his senior year that Hightower played. And it was funny. If you've talked to Preller a few times, she just goes, yeah, that's normal. I go, how many guys are you doing that for? He goes, well, it's a lot of work. And so they had seen Schoolcraft quite a bit. Yeah. They'd seen a lot of his starts. Yes. AJ had gone up and met with him. Yep. Chris Kemp, who's a really fun guy, but kind of might even be a bigger baseball nut than AJ, which is kind of a frightening thought to think about. I'll give you a quick Chris Kemp story. I asked him a while ago about Dylan Lesko, and I said I interviewed him, and I thought the strangest thing was he was throwing 90 miles an hour when he was 14 years old. And Kemp just said, yeah, I remember someone telling me that. I mean, and he didn't say it like he was bragging. It just, that's just part of my job. I said, what 14-year-olds are doing. And, I know what 14-year-olds are doing all over the place, John. That's what I do. And so the amount of depth and research they do on these guys is amazing. So when I'm lucky enough to go on a show and talk about the draft, the one thing I don't do is look at 30 seconds of video and start telling people this is why they made a mistake. I would have taken this guy. These guys do a lot of work on this.
Yeah, no question. Again, and Schoolcraft, as we talked about on draft night, 6'8" lefties up to 99 with advanced changeups and really good body control and athleticism don't grow on trees. Like you said, the slider needs work. That was consistent with his draft report, and that's what player development's for. Very young kid, but lot to like, and we'll see how he continues to develop. And the Padres generally have done a nice job developing pitching prospects. Again, Dylan Lesko's command just never came back, but the Padres recognized that and talked about it and were open about it. They didn't fool themselves into thinking, it'll get better. They could see the way it was going. If you think about Robbie Snelling, who was a very good pick. He's making his way up through the Marlins system now. Cash Mayfield obviously had a good first go around. Cruz Schoolcraft, Mackenzie Gore had his ups and downs, but eventually has found himself in Washington.
Correct.
Generally speaking, young left-handed pitchers in particular, the Padres have done a solid job of developing. Again, they haven't ended up in San Diego most times. John, these are kind of
David Morgan is their crown jewel, who they love to talk about. Yes,
and NDFA, another great signing, different college, but yes, an NDFA, and certainly one they should be proud of and are proud of.
Did you know of Hope International? I'm sorry I cut you off. Did you know of Hope? You did? Okay, you're a better person than I did. I was trying to.
Well, no, it's just growing up in Southern California, playing, coaching, and scouting down here. I had some teammates who played at Hope International, and then being at Baseball America, doing a lot of our Southern California draft stuff. Hope kind of would have one guy every year when I would kind of be running down NAIA, hey, who's around? So I did know of the school, but yes, it is certainly not a place that produces a ton of big league talent. It's more that they would produce one guy who'd be drafted in like the 32nd round back when the draft was 40 rounds. So again, a great job by the Padres there. Yeah. John, these are kind of the big three in terms of pedigree, name value, Salas, Mayfield, Schoolcraft. Miguel Mendez had maybe the best season of any Padres pitcher when you talk about going from low A up through high A, finished up at double A.
Correct.
The stuff was there. The control was there. Really everything was there. What were your overall assessments of Miguel Mendez, and how would you categorize his season?
Well, I mean, he had a great year, especially at Fort Wayne. He put up some eye-popping numbers. I think the ERA was 1.32 and over 60 innings. Has a good fastball, good slider. I mean, I think when he got up to San Antonio in 3 starts, he struggled a little bit. He just might have gotten a little too amped up. Maybe, again, people will tell you about cutting the plate in half in low A, cutting the plate into thirds when you get up to double A. So he may have just caught a little bit too much. But I mean, probably like to see a little more size on him. I mean, I think he's about 170 after 3 trips through the buffet. But he's actually he and probably Garrett Hawkins, who was also in Fort Wayne for a while and ended up in San Antonio, probably 2 of the bigger, real success stories, I think, that they had this year. And, they still very much believe in their international scouting department and their ability to find players. I can imagine we're going to talk about Humberto Cruz, who just underwent surgery recently, was a guy who they kind of found some money and made a trade, so they were able to sign him. But I mean, they have a big belief in their scouts and ability to find people that either could possibly be in San Diego or be some form. I don't mean to turn players into commodities, but kind of be some form of currency to help them get players they want. If you look at most of the guys, they got traded in the deal with Baltimore. I mean, Bateman's the big name and maybe Hightower, but a lot of those guys were just people like Victor Figueroa, people they found in the 18th round who
Tanner Smith, who very few people in the industry knew who he was. Very few people knew he existed.
I mean, if I can jump ahead, one guy that I was really impressed of when I went out to Lake Elsinore was Alex McCoy. I mean, well, one, he's 6'7", 280, so you weren't going to really miss him that much. Very nice kid to talk about. Had some minor injuries. I think it was with his right leg. I forget. It was like a type of hamstring injury, which limited him to 54 games. But anyhow, he's an example of he went to a small Catholic high school in Baltimore. Wasn't really on the perfect game circuit like you would know, like you can talk better than I can about. He went to the University of Maryland on the Eastern Shore. When he was a freshman, he was 6'4", about 205, maybe 210, played some third and first base, was going as a two-way football player, and that he ended up not liking football that much. He grew. He's now been transferred to Hofstra, and the Padres were able to use, kind of how you can sign minor league free agents, undrafted free agents for $150,000, which is the maximum which you can sign people after round 10 without going into what your bonus pool allotment is. So the Padres pretty much told him, we'll give you $150K right now, whether we draft you or not. And so he said a couple places called him up once we wanted to sign the 7th or 8th round for 60, 70, 80,000. He said no, knew the Padres scouts. Had a very good year, has a really good feel, I thought, for the game. Can play left, right field, probably some first. The Padres even let him run around in center. So, I'm not saying this is the next James Wood, but what I'm saying is this is a guy who, as you just said, he performed well in low A. I'd like to see what he can do up in high A.
Especially as a collegian. But to your point, yes, finding players is something the Padres as a scouting group have excelled at, and we'll certainly keep an eye on Alex McCoy. Mm-hmm. John, I do want to circle back. You mentioned Humberto Cruz, who struggled this year and ended up having a UCL repair surgery, an internal brace surgery. In some ways, Humberto Cruz and Miguel Mendez were kind of seen as parallel. Two young, skinny, athletic international signees who could blow 100. Mm-hmm. They really took two very different development turns this year. Mendez, as you talked about, got up to AA again, blowing 100, great slider, still has room to get bigger and stronger, super twitchy, super athletic. Humberto Cruz, similarly, smaller guy, big arm, had a really difficult year and ended the year injured. How would you kind of categorize and characterize Humberto Cruz's year? Because this is the one guy you say, the Padres are really high on, and it just didn't happen this year.
He got off to a slow start. I forget what injury he had in spring training, so that kind of delayed his ramp up. And then he even got to the Arizona Complex League a little slow. When he got up to Elsinore, he did struggle some, but I think, as I'll quote his manager, he said, everything works well with him. He has all the pitches. And again, I mean, as how you define kind of value in the minor leagues is someone who has the ability to repeat their best performance. So, I mean, it's more of just a question of probably him getting comfortable, him actually being able to stack quality performances on that. But as far as all the ingredients are there, the velocity is there, the smoothness of the delivery is there, the ability to spin a ball, to throw a changeup is there. It's just a question. He probably needs more reps. So, I mean, UCL injury, that's definitely going to hurt him, but he's a very young kid, and that's kind of the huge advantage of starting out that young as compared to, if you're in college, you get out after 3 or 4 years, you don't really have that much time to try to make it. And that's the tough part.
Yeah. So if you were to look at this Padres farm system, which, as we've discussed, is very, very, very thin after their trades, if you were to look at what is the strength, it would be on the pitching side, and that you have a Cash Mayfield, you have a Miguel Mendez, you have a Kruz Schoolcraft. Even guys, you mentioned Garrett Hawkins had a good year. Jagger Haynes had a good year where he stepped forward. You can find, 5 or 6 arms within this organization still that there's something there.
Yes.
On the position player side, it's a different story. And that was true even coming into the year. It really was kind of DeVries and Salas, and then they were high on Cobb, Hightower. He got hurt and got a slow start, but there's still a sense that there's something there with him. But now DeVries and Hightower are gone. Salas, in some ways, is kind of the only position player prospect that you look at as, this could really be something. But there are always guys who spring up. There are always guys who, come out of nowhere. You've talked about the Jacob Marcies of the world. Ty Harvey, who was their 5th round pick this year. He's someone the Padres believe could be that guy. You mentioned Alex McCoy. Who are some position player prospects in this system that maybe are not super well known, but you think are worth watching?
Well, I think Truett Madonna, who I talked about briefly now, he's another catcher that's someone that's going to be worthwhile. He'll probably be on Lake Elsinore for the full year. Pretty much if you just kind of go up by each level, you can kind of spot some guys. I thought Dylan Grego from Ball State was a switch hitter. Nice pick. I thought he can play second, short, third base. Could have some value. Cale Fountain is someone who didn't really put up big numbers. He had undergone Tommy John surgery at the end of last year.
Yeah.
So he was kind of in the ACL for longer than he should have been because they wanted to make sure he could play in the field before they sent him up.
Yeah.
I think he had ended the season with kind of a minor knee injury. He'll probably be back on Lake Elsinore. He's someone who
big power, and I will say,
he's a big man. I mean,
there are
he's
people in the
about
Padres org who are very high on him. Yes.
Yeah, the big question with him is going to be the hit tool.
Yeah,
and he's about 6'5", 230. I think he was around 19. I mean, that's frightening. He's that big. He's all right. I mean, if you go up to Fort Wayne, they had some college guys that kind of moved up from Elsinore that could be okay. Cason Wells or Ryan Jackson are fine. Then it gets a little thinner. You go to San Antonio. Marcus Castañon just got promoted to El Paso.
I covered him all the way back when he was at Carter High School in Rialto.
Fun guy. Yeah, it's a really good sense of humor.
He's always hit, and to his credit, he's always outperformed bigger name guys. The defense is a little shaky, but yes, he can hit.
Yeah, he's improved a lot at third base since I first saw him.
Which was needed, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, his arm is a lot better. Romeo Sanabria, I was much higher on at the beginning of the year, and when he was doing well the first couple months, I enjoyed sending mean texts to David J, who wasn't, and then it kind of turned around. I think he was around 660 in OPS the last couple months. His main thing is he was having a lot of trouble just. Again, I think his biggest problem he was having is how to deal with a guy who throws 95 then can spin a slider, which is the problem that's why you and I are not playing right now. That's it's a very difficult thing to do. But yeah, I do like Romeo's bat, but in terms of it's different when I say who I think can be a good player within the context of their level and their division, who can do something with me saying, yes, this is the next first baseman on the San Diego Padres. Yeah. Even Ethan Salas, I think that's going to be a huge thing. Where again, don't mean to repeat myself, where they start him, I think it'll be gigantic. But there's some guys I thought the draft was okay from what I can seem like. They seem like they got a lot of productive players out of there, and we'll see what happens next year.
Absolutely. We will see who takes a step forward. We will see who the Padres add in their international signing class in January. That's always a source of a lot of talent for them. Mostly talent they trade, but nonetheless, they always have good players out there. John, there's one other player I want to hit on with you, and that is someone who is not technically a prospect, in that he has had enough major league at-bats. He has officially graduated from prospect status.
We get a lot of questions on him, but go ahead. I think I know who you're
talking about. And that is Luis Campusano, who I covered since he was in Elsinore and covered him all the way up through the minors into the majors when he's been up there. He has now spent parts of 5 seasons at AAA.
Yeah.
He's had another fantastic offensive year. The Padres have on multiple occasions had prime opportunities to call him up, use him semi-regularly, and 3 different coaching staffs have more or less declined to do so. Bob Melvin at the end of 2023 did a little bit, but it didn't sustain. Where would you say Where would you say Luis Campusano is right now, both in terms of his development and really what his future holds?
Well, we've covered Luis, and his family's been a subscriber to MadFriars since 2016. He doesn't like to do interviews, but he will talk to us. I mean, we had a nice chat in El Paso this year about his Cookie and Pablo, his dogs, his French bulldogs, and they got another dog. They like talking about that.
I've met Cookie. I have not met Pablo. He brought Cookie to the prospect pad a few years ago.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. The Padres have used him, which I thought in El Paso in a really bright way. He kind of catches twice a week. He plays first base about twice, does DH. He's when you say he's hitting well, I mean, we just wrote up our weekly. I got to check this, but just to put this in context, he's leading the league in batting average. He's leading the league in on-base percentage. He's leading the league in slugging percentage. He's 26 years old. I wish, Kyle, I could give you some devastating answer about why he's there. I did talk to Pete Zamora, his manager.
Yeah.
Pete Zamora was the pitching coach in Lake Elsinore when Luis was there.
Yep.
He's had him since in the Arizona Complex League.
Yep. Pete
likes Luis quite a bit. And I think Pete's a pretty straightforward guy. I mean,
I would agree with that.
If Pete did not like him, he probably wouldn't say it directly to me on the record, but he would let me know that no. And he loves Luis. He made a point he said something after one game over there that I thought gave a little bit of insight. He said, yeah, watching Campy work with Wes Benjamin was like watching what he did in Lake Elsinore. So I kind of went back to that. I said, well, the next day, I said, kind of, what did you mean by that? And he pointed out that Luis kind of grew up catching on two legs, and he never really mastered the whole down on one knee thing. And Pete, as a longtime pitcher, and Luke Montz, the AA manager in San Antonio, who caught for 13 years, both of them have some very strong opinions about that, like a lot of people in baseball do, about how well that does work. But he said, Luis, the thing that he always liked about him the most in Lake Elsinore was, he said, we had guys like Luis Patino and Mackenzie Gore there, and you could throw a power slider when a runner was on third in a one-run game, and Luis would call it, and he'd get it every single time. The narrative that goes around Padres, maybe Padres Twitter and on podcasts, that pitchers don't like to throw to him, at least in El Paso, I didn't see that. And Luis came across pretty positive, more so than in past years I've dealt with Luis. The Padre fan of me is coming out. Having him catch once or twice a week and play first base and DH, it's a little different in El Paso with the hitting environment. It's not that much different.
And that's why I do want to follow up with you on how was his play at first base, because that was a new development. How did he look over there?
He grew up. Remember, this because in high school he was a first baseman. They converted him to a catcher, I think, his junior year. So that's always been his first position. Yeah, he seemed fine over there. He didn't look like a lot of catchers do. When they're at first base, they look kind of bored. That they don't know what's going on. I think he just likes to. I think he likes to play, and he likes to hit. And put it this way, if he'd been in a really bad mood when I saw him this year and kind of pouty or bitter, I totally would have understood it. But he isn't. Pete came in and said a bunch of things. He said anytime Luis came back down, he said, hey, let's get back to work. Let's go. And I don't think I'm making excuses for him. Some of the chances the Padres have given him this year, where I think he sits on the bench for 5 games and gets
what they did with him this year.
Was ridiculous.
He was never given a real chance. People look at 0 for 21. When you get 21 at bats spread out over 5 weeks, and no one would be successful in that environment. So, and that was sort of the issue that I talked about a lot earlier in the year, is when they didn't have anyone who could DH effectively. Or they didn't have a left fielder who could play it effectively, and they had one guy for 2 spots. They needed to bring up Luis Campusano and give him time to acclimate and go through the ups and downs, and they never did. And then by the time you get to the trade deadline, you make other additions. Now there's not a spot for him, and going down the stretch, you don't have time to let him acclimate. Now, I would say that I think that if he gets a fresh start, it would not surprise me at all if we look up 2 or 3 years from now and he's hitting 5th or 6th in someone else's lineup, hitting 20, 25 homers a year as an everyday DH who, maybe catches a little bit, first base a little bit, kind of a third catcher situation. But that talent is in there. And I do think that there are going to be more opportunities in other organizations, just given the Padres outside of that end of 2023 have not given him the runway needed to really establish any sort of rhythm to become an everyday big league player.
Yeah, I mean, I think also a lot of teams would probably say, why should we give up anything when the Padres will probably non-tender him at the end of the year?
And that is another factor. Yes. So again, someone will pick him up, whether it's in a trade, whether it's as a minor league free agent. And I think if that team gives him a chance, I do think that he will have success. But again, we will see what that looks like. It's going to be interesting seeing how Luis Campusano's career plays out from here on out. John, this has been a fantastic in-depth conversation. Any final thoughts about the Padres farm system, whether it's, things to watch, players to watch, anything at all?
Well, one, apologies for my chihuahuas that you can hear them in the background that are barking a little bit because my wife's about to come home. I would say on the Padres system, it's still a fun system. A lot of interesting coverage. I mean, there should be some guys coming up because of just the attention and the amount the Padres are willing to spend scouting to find people. And I think, the guy I mentioned earlier, McCoy, is a prime example. He wasn't a big guy in the colleges or on the perfect game circuit, and he could end up being something, or he might not. That's hard to tell.
We shall see. As we mentioned, the AA season wraps up this weekend. AAA season wraps up later this month. Then it's time for the Arizona Fall League. So definitely still time to keep an eye on some Padres minor leaguers and see who maybe starts to pop at the end of the year and into the AFL. John, thank you so much for joining me. This was a blast. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me, Kyle. Always fun. Hopefully do this again. Take care, man.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. That'll do it for another edition of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. Go ahead and give us a review. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever platform you're watching and listening. We'd love to hear from you. For John Conniff, I'm Kyle Glaser. We will be back on Sunday with Mike Cameron to wrap up the Padres Rockies series. Take care, everybody.